If you're a video creator, stock footage can be an absolute lifesaver, but you do need to know a little bit about how and when to use it, and most importantly, how to integrate it seamlessly into your project. If used seamlessly and effectively, it can improve your storytelling prowess by 10 times. But if you just drag it and drop it without much thought into your projects, it's probably gonna stick out like a sore thumb. So in this video, we'll take you through 5 tips that will help you seamlessly integrate stock footage into your video projects and make it seem like that stock footage is actually your footage. I'm Teresa with InVideo. Let's go ahead and jump in. So before we get into the tips, let's first talk about the most common scenarios where stock footage is going to come in handy. The first and most obvious scenario is when you want to show something that you just weren't able to film yourself, like an underwater shot if you don't have access to a waterproof camera case, a drone shot if you don't have access to a drone, or a fog-covered mountain if you don't have access to a fog-covered mountain. For example, I went out and took some B-roll shots of Chicago, but let's say I just really wanted to add a drone shot to this sequence. I really felt like it would pull the whole thing together. I don't personally have access to a drone, so in this case, I would turn to stock footage. Another time you might need stock footage is this. You go out, you're filming, you're feeling great, you're feeling like you're getting everything you need and more. You get back home, you upload your footage, and you realize you forgot a few shots that you really need. Now this happens to me more often than I care to admit. Or it might not even be that you forgot, but it might just be that you get to editing and you think of more ideas for shots that you really wish you got, and you might not be able to go back out and shoot. So, stock footage. So I'm creating this lovely little autumn montage. I go out and shoot all the leaves and all the colors. It's looking great. And then when I'm editing, I might be like, if only I had one shot of a leaf actually falling off of a tree, that would be so cool. Why didn't I think of that when I was out shooting? This is where stock footage comes in handy. The third scenario is when you want to switch to B-roll and maybe you're not able to film your own B-roll, or you're not able to film the specific B-roll that you need. For instance, in this video, I was talking about the different types of cuts used in different types of videos. I was talking specifically about music videos in this one section of the video, so I wanted a shot of a piano, which I do not have a piano, so instead I used a stock clip. Another example for a business, if a car dealership wanted to promote family-friendly cars, they can use these dynamic stock clips to bring some visuals in that will really help sell the product. It helps tell a little bit more of a story and just give some visuals to the video, even if for whatever reason they weren't able to go out and shoot with an actual family. You might also need B-roll simply to cover up jump cuts. If you've ever edited an interview or a talking video of any kind, you've probably run into the jump cut problem. It's that really abrupt transition that looks like the subject jumped from one spot in the frame to a slightly different spot. It can be really distracting. You probably know what I'm talking about. So you can hide that by throwing in some B-roll, and for B-roll you can use stock footage. In this example, I was talking about cameras and filming, so I took a stock clip of a camera, patched up the video, and it's good as new. And then one more B-roll scenario where you might need to find some stock footage is if you need a transition. So let's say you filmed a vlog and you started your day at a cafe and then you ended your day on the top of a mountain. People do that, right? Yeah. As you were out filming, you might have gotten some footage at the cafe and then gotten some footage at the top of the mountain. You might not have been thinking about filming the hiking in between, but when you're editing your vlog, that's gonna be a pretty drastic change to go straight from a cafe to a mountaintop. So in this case, you can go and find some stock footage of hiking that looks similar enough to the place where you actually were hiking, and then you can throw that in between, and it'll add a nice transition sequence. And here's the best part. If you're already an InVideo user, we've made it easier than ever to find stock footage because there is a library right within the editor of over 8 million high-quality stock footage clips. So hop over to the video tab on the left, and that is where you will be able to search for the stock footage you need. You can find stock footage for any of the scenarios that we just mentioned, and then you can just add it right into your project It's all in the same interface, so it's super easy. And just in case you're looking for even more sources for free stock footage, you can go ahead and check out this video where we talk about the top websites to find free stock footage in 2021. All right, now that we've gone over the scenarios, let's go ahead and go over the tips to seamlessly integrate your stock footage. Number one, take time to find the right clip. There is currently a lot of stock footage available on the internet, so for any given clip that you need, you're gonna have a lot of options available. And sometimes you might find a stock clip that looks really high quality and you really like it, but then when you line it up with the footage that you took, it just doesn't quite match. So you really wanna take the time to try out a few different clips to see what works best instead of just jumping on to the first clip you find that you like. There might be small nuances between your videos and the stock videos, like exposure levels or contrast levels, saturation, colors, and they might just not quite match up, and you're not going to notice that until you have them lined up together and test out what the whole sequence looks like really with your footage and the stock footage. So let's go back to my Chicago B-roll sequence example. As you can see, I shot my footage closer to the evening. You can kind of tell by the colors and the exposure levels. So I'm going to try out a few different drone shots. There's a lot available, so let's see, this one looks a little bit warmer than my footage. This one was clearly shot in the middle of the day, so it doesn't quite match. And then after trying a few more, I think this one matches the best, so that's the one I'm gonna go with. Another example, let's say you shot this footage of a waterfall. You took all of these amazing aesthetic shots of the waterfall, but as you're editing, you're like, I really want that one close-up shot of a waterfall, and that's the one shot I didn't get. No sweat, just head over to the video tab on InVideo, search waterfall, and see what you can find. You can try narrowing it down and searching close-up waterfall. You're probably gonna get a wide variety of shots that could work, so again, test out a few different ones. See which one looks the most like your location. You can look at things like the color of the rocks that are around the waterfall or the color of the water itself. We're really just looking for the greatest amount of continuity, and after some trial and error, you should be able to find a clip that's gonna save the day for you. The next tip is to try to match the location as much as possible, and of course that's gonna be tough. You're probably not gonna find footage that was shot at the actual same location unless you were shooting at like a really famous landmark or something like that, but usually you're just gonna try to match the aesthetic as much as you can. There's also some things you can do in editing to make them match better, so we'll get to that next, but for now you're just gonna try to find the clips that match the best without any editing. First, keywords are important. Be specific in your keywords. So if you shot in a snowy field, make sure you're searching for a field in the winter instead of just a field. If you were hiking on a red rock mountain, put that in the keywords. And then the next thing you can do is search for really close-up shots or really wide shots. When it comes to close-up shots, if you shot in a forest, for example, and you use a few really close-up shots of some leaves or the bark on the trees, there's really just not going to be enough context for the audience to be able to tell that it's a different location. And as you can see, these shots are also great for visual intrigue. I mean, who doesn't love a good macro shot, right? And then on the flip side, if you have a super wide shot, for this example, maybe a drone shot of the top of the forest, you can't see enough specific details to give context. So the audience has no reason to think that this is a different forest. And when we're watching a sequence of images, our brain wants to relate them together. So our brains kind of just assume that this would be the same forest. And then one last little tip, if you're really struggling to find footage that looks like it's from the same location, you can always find footage of a path or a road or a train or something like that that suggests that you're moving to a new location. In that case, it's not going to matter as much if it looks like a different place because it's suggested that, you're on the road traveling to a new spot. So, you could have driven many miles away. So if it looks a little bit different, that's okay. The third tip is to try zooming in on clips that don't seem to be working. There are some clips that just have a very stock footage look to them. The way that this clip is wide, kind of slow zooming in on this very general looking location, it just looks like a stock footage clip. It's kind of hard to explain. So if you're concerned about a clip looking too stocky because of the way it was shot, you can try zooming in on it. The wide shot look is pretty common in stock footage, but zooming in on a clip can give it a whole new look. You can try kind of cropping it to different sides, different parts of the frame to see what you like the best. And then the other benefit of this is that it makes it into more of a close-up, which we talked about before is very beneficial. You can get rid of some of the context that's in the shot if it doesn't fit with the rest of your footage, or you can just eliminate certain elements of the frame that you might feel are distracting. So here is a picture-perfect time-lapse of a sunset. It's a very stock footage sunset. If you zoom in to the top portion of the image, you've still got the sunset and the time-lapse and all of those elements, but you've essentially changed the composition of the shot. And it has a different look to it than the original, very stocky-looking shot. You do want to be careful and make sure that when you're zooming into the images, they're not too grainy once you've zoomed in, so you want to get high quality footage and just make sure you're not zooming in too much. Just eyeball it. If you think it's looking too grainy, then maybe that clip just isn't going to work, or you need to zoom it out a little bit more. The next tip is to add overlays. Now this is one of my favorite parts because it's super effective in getting your shots to match, and it's also where you get to get really creative. So here's an example of a sequence with some shots of a record player and some records and stuff like that. Some of this is my footage and some of it is stock footage. And now I'm gonna stylize this sequence with kind of some film dust and film scratches overlays to give it kind of a vintage effect that very much fits the aesthetic. Now, in some cases, you could just add one overlay over the entire sequence, and that could be a way to unify all of your footage. But I don't want to do that. I want to use it more periodically. So I'm kind of scattering it throughout the sequence, and what I'm going to do is use it to kind of bridge my footage with the stock footage. So I'm using it almost as transitions in between two shots. Here's another waterfall example because we all love waterfalls. If you watch carefully, there's a slight jump when we cut from the wide shot to the closer shot. So a quick fix to this problem is going to be to add a misty overlay over both shots. And now, as you can see, it's barely noticeable that they were even shot at a different location. These overlay effects can be resized, they can be rotated, they can be flipped, so there is so much room for you to get creative here. The next step is to spend some time editing your audio. Now, you want to make sure your audio is consistent, and you can also use sound effects as a bridge between your clips. So when you're cutting from clip to clip, if there is a change in pitch from one shot to the next, or a drastic drop off in the sound level or something like that, it's very obvious. So you really want to make sure it's all uniform. This is important anytime you're creating a video, but especially if you're trying to blend your footage with stock footage. So in this sequence, the two clips match very well visually because of the bokeh effect that both of them have, but you can hear the pitch drop off drastically in the second clip. It sounds very jarring, and it just breaks the illusion of continuity. Even though the clips already look seamless, you need them to sound seamless as well. It's really important. So this first clip has kind of a traffic noise in the background, and what we want to do is make that continue underneath the second clip. So the second clip, I'm going to just go ahead and mute the audio. We don't really need it at all. And then I'm going to go into the advanced timeline on InVideo. So to get there, just click on one of your scenes and then click timeline. And now the first clip is underneath the second one, and I'm just going to drag it out so that it plays underneath the entire time. So you're not going to see it, but you're going to continue to hear that audio underneath the second clip as well. And then you can also use sound effects as a really powerful way to bridge two of your clips. So we're actually going to use kind of a similar strategy that we used with the overlays, but we're going to do it with an audio track. So I'm going to search the InVideo sound library now to find a sound effect, so maybe a car driving by. And then I'm just going to place that sound effect so that it's playing basically as the clip transitions from one to the next. It's a really powerful way to blend the two. When the audience hears that, they almost subconsciously connect the two clips in their mind. And then one more thing you can do is use the same or a similar sound effect at a few different points throughout the video sequence. This is just a way to give some continuity to the whole thing. So if you have a more ambient sound like rain or birds chirping or something like that, you can kind of just throw it in underneath a few different points in the video, and that really just unifies the whole entire thing and gives it more of a cohesive feel. And that brings us to our last tip, which is to keep your stock footage clips short and be very intentional with them. Just keep in mind that the longer you have a stock footage clip play, the more time there is for the audience to start to pick up on those details and maybe start to realize what you were doing there. So here's a sequence with one really long stock clip added in, and I bet you can tell which one it is, because as the clip continues to play, it just becomes a little bit more noticeable. But if I shorten that clip and we watch it again, Well, I know you already know which one is the stock clip, but if you didn't already know, you probably wouldn't be able to tell. There's just not enough time for your brain to really pick up on those details that would give it away. So that's just a general tip. It's definitely not a rule. There are times when you might want to use a longer stock footage clip and you can make it work, but in general, try to keep them shorter, and that should make them less noticeable. If you found this video helpful, be sure to give it a like, and if you have any questions at all on stock footage, leave a comment. I'm Teresa with InVideo, and I will see you in the next one.